The UN submarine explorer, led by Carl Nelson, is on a mission in the Java Sea. Nelson discusses the legendary giant ape Kong with his crew, including nurse Susan Watson. An unexpected rock slide forces them to stop at Mondo Island, where Kong lives. Kong saves Susan from a dinosaur and later shakes their submarine until she calms him down. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, the villainous Doctor Who creates a robot Mechani-Kong to mine the rare element X. After kidnapping Kong from Mondo Island, Doctor Who tries to use Kong for his plan, but Kong escapes. Hey, that's the title of the movie! The battle between Kong and Mechani-Kong culminates in Tokyo, where Kong defeats the robot and destroys Doctor Who's ship. In the end, Kong returns to his home on Mondo Island. King Kong Escapes was released in 1967 as an adaptation of sorts to the Rankin-Bass cartoon The King Kong Show that had aired the year prior. In a way, King Kong Escapes feels more like a Japanese remake of the original 33 King Kong film because it basically is. Sure, we have more out there elements from the cartoon, like Mechani-Kong and Doctor Who, but for the most part, we get the same story from the 33 film. A group of human characters end up on an island where they encounter Kong, everyone's favorite gorilla battles an Elasmosaurus and a T-Rex, or in the case of King Kong Escapes, it's a giant sea serpent and an unnamed Gorosaurus. The film ends in the city, rather than Skull Island or Mondo Island. The film was directed by Ishiro Honda, who at this point had been behind the majority of the Showa-era Godzilla flicks, as well as Rodan, Atragon, and War of the Gargantuas. Much like those other films, Eiji Tsuburaya was behind the special effects. Akira Ifukube composed the score for the film, while Tomoyuki Tanaka served as the executive producer. A new addition to this production team is Arthur Rankin Jr., who acted on set as a technical advisor. Rankin was part of Rankin-Bass, and he oversaw production since the film was based on his cartoon. While I'm not sure if he had any substantial say in the making of the movie, it is interesting that he was there during the production. But is the movie any good? Yeah, I think so. It's campy in the same way that all the other Toho tokusatsu films are from this era. See, at this point, the studio had been making these movies for years and years, so if you know their MO, then you kind of know what you're going to get here. You've got really well put together sets, really well designed suits, human characters that are kind of and an overall tone that is just fun and campy and corny in the best way possible. For some reason, not a lot of people talk about this movie, and if they do, they really only bring up Mechani-Kong. I genuinely think that this is a very underrated movie. Hell, I'm convinced that general audiences in America nowadays don't even know that this movie exists, and if they do, they're either big fans of the kaiju genre or just think it's like some mockbuster, kind of like Konga or Ape. Like a lot of Toho kaiju films from this era, the human characters in King Kong Escapes are nothing to really write home about, except for one character. Doctor Who, no relation to the British guy, is one of the best human villains in a Toho kaiju film, maybe ever. He is so goofy, he is so cartoony, he's got this cape and these wild eyebrows with a genuinely insane accent.
No, get us out of here now, now!
The character, played by Hideo Yamamoto, is a standout, outshining many actual Bond villains with his over-the-top schemes and menacing presence. His entire plan is also just so hilarious to me. So he wants to covertly mine this radioactive element X. So he's like, instead of setting up a mine and, establishing radioactive hazmat suits, let's just build a kaiju-sized robot monkey to do it. Like, okay, it's so out there, I just love it. Speaking of said robot monkey, the Mechani-Kong suit is fantastic. It's a perfect adaptation of the cartoon version of the character, and if I'm being honest, it just looks really cool in a fun, groovy 1960s retro-futuristic kind of way.
Groovy, baby!
It looks very pulpy and comic booky, but also cartoony at the same time. I love how the arms are just as long as Kong's, and they're just so outstretched they're almost hitting the ground. I love the little grenades that he has around his waist. It feels tactical, but also ties the design together nicely. Overall, it is a 10 out of 10 design for me. Apparently, in this anthology comic series from the 90s, Mechani-Kong had a submachine gun, which is the coolest thing I've ever heard. However, one of the weirdest pieces of Mechani-Kong trivia is that in the early 90s, Toho wanted to make Godzilla vs. Mechani-Kong. The basic plot is that Japan would build Mechani-Kong to defend themselves from Godzilla. One of the weirder weapons that would have been introduced in Mechani-Kong's arsenal is the ability to inject humans into Godzilla. So, while Godzilla was fighting Mechani-Kong, he was being fought on the inside of his own body against humans. What a weird concept. It reminds me of the old defunct Disney ride Body Wars. Unfortunately, Godzilla vs. Mechani-Kong would get scrapped, and in its place they would make Godzilla vs. Mothra: The Battle for Earth. And the Kong suit, it is a huge step up from the one in 1962's King Kong vs. Godzilla. It makes him look way less dopey, way less stupid, and it honestly made me mad as a kid that they didn't use this suit more in other Toho projects, because it is one of the cleanest Kong designs from the Showa era. That being said though, they did end up reusing this in the series Go Godman, specifically in the episode Green Man vs. Gorilla. Overall, King Kong Escapes is such a wild ride. It was one of my favorites as a kid. After all, I loved King Kong, and I wanted to see more Toho Kong films. I didn't even know that this movie was a thing until I was like 8 years old and was scrolling through all the channels on the family DVR and stumbled upon it on Turner Classic Movies. Eventually, as a birthday present, I got this DVD combo pack of both King Kong vs. Godzilla and King Kong Escapes. So it was just really cool going back and forth, watching them as almost this like duology where, to me, when I was younger, I treated this film like it was a sequel to King Kong vs. Godzilla, even though I know it's not connected, but come on. If you're looking for a fun and enjoyable kaiju movie from back in the 60s that features King Kong in the leading role where he battles a robot version of himself, as well as a giant sea serpent and Gorosaurus with a very cartoony human villain that's ripped right out of James Bond, then this might be the movie for you. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It doesn't treat it like it's a full-on comedy either. It manages to settle right in the middle, and that is a tone that I love with these movies. So go and check them out if you haven't seen them yet, and if you have seen it, then let me know down below in the comments what you think. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know. And with all of that out of the way, I'm Cole McCormick. You're watching Firewood Media, and I just want to say thank you so much for all the support recently. I just started live streaming here on this very YouTube channel, and it has been so much fun interacting with all of you. I've been doing tier lists, I've been reacting to analog horror, so consider stopping by whenever there's a stream. Lately, I just did an editing stream where I showed myself editing the entire Godzilla video that I just put out. So if you're down for that, then stop by. Either way, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.